August 29, 1941. Libyan desert, 11,000 feet. Clive Caldwell is dying. His P-40 Tomahawk shouldn't exist anymore. Over 100 bullet holes perforate the fuselage. 5 20mm cannon shells have punched clean through the wings. Coolant streams from the shattered radiator, vaporizing into white smoke that fills the cockpit. The propeller shudders with each rotation. Blood runs down Caldwell's left arm, pooling in his glove. Any other fighter, Hurricane Spitfire Bf-109, would be scrap metal by now, but this supposedly inferior American reject refuses to fall. Below, the entire North African front hangs by a thread. If Caldwell goes down, if Caldwell doesn't make it back, if this battered Tomahawk finally breaks apart, air cover collapses. Operation Crusader dies. Tobruk falls. Rommel wins. The engine screams. The prop shudders. Vision blurs. Yet somehow impossibly this P-40 keeps flying. This is the fighter every expert dismissed. The design considered obsolete before it left the factory. The aircraft nobody wanted. So why won't it die when everything else does? How does a fighter dismissed as obsolete survive what kills every other aircraft in the sky? The P-40's story begins in humiliation. In 1937, Buffalo, New York, Curtiss Wright Aircraft Company. Chief designer Donovan Berlin faces an impossible deadline. The U.S. Army demands a modern fighter, immediately. No time, no budget, no second chances. Berlin doesn't design anything new. He can't. He takes the outdated P-36 Hawk airframe and forces the new Allison V-1710 engine into it. 12 cylinders, liquid-cooled. 140 horsepower on paper. It's not innovation, it's desperation. The Allison lacks a two-stage supercharger. Above 15,000 feet, where real fighters dominate, the P-40 suffocates. It can't breathe, can't climb, can't compete. Test pilots mock it. Aviation journals dismiss it. Before the first production model rolls off the line, the P-40 is already obsolete. Then war explodes across Europe. In 1940, Britain is bleeding to death. The Luftwaffe owns the sky. Hurricanes and Spitfires fall faster than factories can replace them. Churchill begs Roosevelt for fighters. Any fighters. Anything that flies. America ships P-40s by the hundreds. The British try them over the English Channel. Disaster. Against Bf-109s at 20,000 feet, the Tomahawk is a flying coffin. Pilots return shaking their heads. Some don't return at all. So the RAF does what you do with failures, ships them somewhere else, somewhere desperate enough to accept hand-me-downs. North Africa, Middle East, Burma, China, theaters where combat happens at ground level, where heat kills engines and dust chokes carburetors, where altitude means nothing and only one thing matters: can you survive today? In May 1941, the first Tomahawks arrive in Egypt. No. 250 Squadron receives them with disgust barely concealed. These are the fighters nobody else wants. The rejects. Flight Lieutenant Bobby Gibbies climbs into the cockpit for the first time. Cramped, stiff controls, poor visibility. He throttles up and desert sand immediately infiltrates everything. The air filter, the oil system, the guns. This is what Britain sends to stop Rommel. The western desert is hell with a horizon. Temperatures inside the cockpit exceed 120 degrees. Metal burns bare skin. Sweat blinds you. Dehydration kills as efficiently as bullets. And the enemy, the Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Fast. Deadly. Flown by veterans who've been killing since Poland. Italian Machi C-202s, sleek predators that climb like rockets. Vichy French Duoitine D-520s when the Allies invade Syria in June, nimble fighters piloted by men who hate the British as much as the Germans do. Every engagement proves the same cruel truth. The P-40 can't outclimb them, can't outturn them, can't keep pace when they go vertical. Pilots come back with wings stitched by bullets, coolant leaking, engines coughing, if they come back at all. Maintenance crews work through sandstorms with tools that break and parts that don't exist. They cannibalize wrecks, improvise repairs with wire and prayers. By midsummer 1941, the situation is collapsing. The Western Desert Air Force is hemorrhaging aircraft. Losses mount daily. Rommel's Afrika Korps advances unopposed. Luftwaffe Stukas obliterate British supply columns. The siege of Tobruk tightens like a noose. The garrison is dying. Slowly. Publicly. And the RAF can't stop it. The P-40 isn't just underperforming, it's losing the air war. Losing North Africa. Losing everything. Squadron leaders submit grim reports. Request better aircraft, Spitfires, anything. The replies come back negative. Nothing available. Make do with what you have. So they fly the Tomahawk. Not because it's good, because there's nothing else. And every morning fewer pilots walk out to the flight line. June 1941. Everything gets worse. Syria explodes into war. Vichy French forces defend Damascus with D-18 D5-20 fighters, modern Agile, flown by pilots who've chosen collaboration over surrender. Number 3 Squadron RAF engages them at low altitude. The French expect slaughter. They've heard about the inferior American cast-off. The first engagement becomes a bloodbath. Tomahawks can't turn with D5-20s, can't climb with them. 3 P-40s go down in flames in 2 weeks. Pilots burn alive or die on impact. But something unexpected happens. The survivors stop fighting by the rules. Flight Lieutenant Bobby Gibbies refuses to dogfight. He dives from above full throttle, 6 guns hammering, then runs before the enemy can react. It's not combat, it's hit-and-run brutality. But he comes home. 5 D-420s don't. The lesson spreads like wildfire: don't fight fair. Fight to survive. Then the desert itself becomes the enemy. July, Egypt. The cockpit temperature hits 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Pilots strip to shorts and undershirts. The metal control stick sears palms. Sweat fogs goggles within seconds. Men pass out from heat exhaustion before the enemy fires a shot. Dehydration kills Sergeant Peter Mills on the ground. His body is found slumped in the cockpit, dead before takeoff. And then the Messerschmitt Bf 100O Line F arrives. The Friedrich. Faster than anything the British have faced. Better armed, 120mm cannon firing through the propeller hub, 2 machine guns in the cowl. It climbs at 3,000 feet per minute. The P-40 climbs at 2,100. The mathematics are simple. Brutal. Fatal. August 8th. Pilot Officer Peter Turnbull intercepts Ju-87 Stukas east of Tobruk. He destroys 2 bombers in clean passes. Textbook attacks, no wasted ammunition. Then a Bf 109 drops on him from above. 20mm cannon shells tear through the Tomahawk's tail. The rudder nearly separates. The elevator dangles by control cables. Metal screams. The aircraft shudders violently. Any other fighter disintegrates. The Hurricane's tail breaks off. The Spitfire's structure fails. Turnbull's P-40 keeps flying. He nurses it home, barely controllable, wallowing through the air like a wounded animal. When he lands, ground crews count the damage. 47 hits, cannon shells, machine gun rounds, shrapnel. The engine still runs. The airframe holds. They patch the holes with sheet metal and send it up again at dawn. August 14th. Flight Officer Alan Rawlinson strafes a German convoy at 200 feet. A Bf 109 catches him in the climb. A 20mm shell punches through the cockpit. Rawlinson braces for the explosion. It doesn't come. The shell passes through the instrument panel between his legs, missing his body by inches, and exits through the floor. The hole is the size of a fist. He doesn't realize he's been hit until after landing. He climbs out, checks himself. Not a scratch. The aircraft flies the next mission. The pattern repeats. Again. 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 Pilots who should be dead walk away. Aircraft that should be scrap metal keep fighting. But it's not enough to stop the bleeding. By late August, Rommel is winning. The Afrika Korps closes on Tobruk. The siege tightens. Allied convoys are slaughtered from the air. Every supply ship that burns means the garrison starves faster. No 250 squadron is down to 12 operational Tomahawks. Spare parts don't exist. Maintenance crews strip wrecks like vultures. Engines are run past failure limits. Pilots fly 3 sorties a day on 4 hours of sleep. Exhaustion becomes normal. Fear becomes background noise. Death becomes expected. Caldwell leads every patrol personally. His left arm still aches from wounds that haven't healed. Flight surgeons order him grounded. He ignores them. August 29th. Intelligence reports a massive Axis bomber strike inbound. Stukas, dozens of them, escorted by Bf-109s from Jagdgeschwader 27. Target Tobruk. If those bombers get through, the garrison falls. The siege ends in massacre. North Africa collapses. Caldwell scrambles with what he has. 9 aircraft, maybe 10 if the engine on Houston's Tomahawk holds together, against 70 enemy aircraft. He climbs into the furnace heat of the cockpit, straps in. The stitches in his arm pull tight. Blood seeps through the bandage. He doesn't care. The engine roars to life. Sand blasts across the windscreen. He throttles up and accelerates into the shimmering desert air, alone against an armada. This is suicide. Everyone knows it. But there's no one else. The P-40 doesn't win dogfights. It survives them. That distinction saves thousands of lives. Pilots across every theater begin learning the same brutal lesson. The aircraft's weaknesses force you to think differently, to fight smarter, to turn limitation into weapon. North Africa. Caldwell creates what he calls the running dive. It's simple, ruthlessly simple. Climb high, spot the enemy below, dive at full throttle faster than physics says you should, fire one precise burst, then run horizontally before they can turn. The P-40's weight becomes an advantage. In a dive, it accelerates past 400 miles per hour. Bf-109 pilots try to follow and their wings buckle under the stress. Some tear apart mid-air victims of their own pursuit. The 650 caliber Browning machine guns don't just damage targets, they obliterate them. Each gun fires 850 rounds per minute. Convergence set at 300 yards. When all 6 streams connect, metal doesn't bend, it vaporizes. But only if you're patient. Caldwell drills his pilots relentlessly. Hold fire until the enemy fills your gun sight. Until you can see rivets, panel lines, the pilot's helmet. No spray and pray. No wasted ammunition. One burst, one kill, or you die trying. The mathematics are unforgiving. Miss and you've given away your position. Given the enemy time to turn, given them the advantage, patience becomes survival. Across the Pacific, December 1941, 100 P-40Bs and P-40Cs arrive in crates in Kunming, China. The American volunteer group mercenaries and misfits uncrate them in mud and monsoon rain. Their commander is Claire Chennault, former U.S. Army Air Corps captain. Cashiered, dismissed for advocating tactics the establishment called heresy. Now he has a chance to prove them wrong. Chennault studies the enemy with obsessive precision. The Japanese Nakajima Ki-43 Oscar is a beautiful aircraft, light, maneuverable, agile enough to outfly anything in a turning fight, and fragile as paper. The P-40 is the opposite. Heavy, brutal, armored like a flying tank. Chennault's orders are absolute: never dogfight a Japanese fighter, never turn with an Oscar or Zero, never give them the fight they want. Use altitude, speed, firepower, dive from above, shoot, climb away using momentum. If they follow, they bleed energy. If they don't, they die. Simple, brutal, effective. The Flying Tigers paint shark mouths on their P-40s, copying the RAF's North African Tomahawks. Rows of teeth, dead eyes, psychological warfare. The enemy sees those teeth and hesitates. Half a second of doubt. In aerial combat, half a second is eternity. In Burma, spring 1942, RAF and RAF squadrons refined fuel discipline to an art form. The P-40's range is limited barely 700 miles with external tanks. Every gallon matters. Pilots learn to lean the fuel mixture at cruise. Maintain optimal altitude for efficiency. Reserve fuel strictly for combat. They also learn where the aircraft can take damage and still fly. The Allison V-1710 engine is the weak point. One hit to the glycol coolant system means 15 minutes before seizure, maybe 20 if you're lucky and gentle on the throttle. Pilots memorize every friendly airstrip within gliding distance, every emergency landing zone, every dry lake bed, but the airframe itself nearly indestructible. The main wing spar absorbs multiple 20mm cannon hits without failure. Control cables are redundant cut-one backups take over. The tail can lose half its surface and still maintain stability. Ground crews start calling it the truck. Not affection, just fact. It hauls, it takes hits. It comes back. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor, Wheeler Field, Oahu. Lieutenants George Welch and Ken Taylor are drunk from an all-night poker game when the first bombs fall. They don't wait for orders. They sprint to a phone, call Halewa Auxiliary Airfield 10 miles away, scream at the ground crew to prep their P-40s. Then they jump into Welch's Buick and race through hell. Explosions bracket the road. Zero strafe fleeing vehicles. Smoke turns morning into twilight. They reach Halewa. No pre-flight checks, no briefing, no time. 4 guns armed per aircraft instead of 6. Half ammunition. They don't care. They scramble. Welch spots Aichi D-3A Val dive bombers heading toward Ewa. He dives, closing fast. First burst misses high. He corrects instantly. Second burst catches the Val's engine. Fireball. Debris. One less bomber. He pulls up, finds another, closes to 50 yards, and fires until it disintegrates. Taylor engages Mitsubishi A6M-Zeros head-on, a tactic every manual calls suicide. But he's betting the P-40's armor can survive what the Zero's tissue-thin structure cannot. He's right. Cannon shells punch through his wings. The Zero explodes under concentrated .50 caliber fire. Taylor pulls through smoking, bleeding hydraulic fluid, alive. Both pilots land at Wheeler to rearm. The base is still burning, still under attack. They take off again anyway. By the time the second Japanese wave withdraws, Welch and Taylor claim 7 kills between them. The number is disputed. Chaos makes confirmation impossible. But the fact is undeniable. The obsolete P-40 has drawn first blood while the Pacific Fleet burns. Across North Africa, pilots perfect coordinated attacks. 2 ship elements become doctrine. One dives as shooter, the other covers high. If the first pilot misses, the second finishes. If enemy fighters pursue the shooter, the roles reverse instantly. The P-40 becomes a weapon of calculated violence, not elegant, not forgiving, but when flown with discipline, lethal. August 1941. The tactics are refined. The pilots are hardened. The aircraft's strengths and weaknesses are mapped like terrain, but none of it prepares them for what's coming. The largest air battle North Africa has ever seen. 15 P-40s against 70 Axis aircraft. Mathematics say it's impossible. Caldwell doesn't care about mathematics. November 1941. Everything changes. Operation Crusader launches on November 18th. British and Commonwealth forces push west across Cyrenaica to relieve the besieged garrison at Tobruk. Tens of thousands of troops, hundreds of tanks, artillery, logistics stretched across the desert. The entire offensive depends on air superiority. If the Desert Air Force can destroy Axis bombers and protect Allied ground forces, the advance succeeds. If not, the tanks die in the open under Stuka attacks and the offensive collapses. The Luftwaffe knows this. They mass every available bomber, Ju-87 Stukas, Ju-88 medium bombers, and every available fighter from Jagdgeschwader 27 to break the Commonwealth air umbrella. The P-40 squadrons are outnumbered 3-1, sometimes worse. On November 19th, Caldwell leads number 250 Squadron into the largest air battle of the North African campaign to date. Intelligence reports 70 Axis aircraft inbound toward Allied positions. 15 Tomahawks scramble to intercept. The mathematics are suicide. No tactical manual in any Air Force recommends engaging at 5-to-1 odds. Caldwell doesn't hesitate. He climbs to 16,000 feet, spots the massive enemy formation below, rolls inverted, and dives straight into the center. His wingmen follow without question. The Axis formation scatters in confusion. Nobody expects the inferior fighters to attack head-on. Doctrine says the P-40 should avoid combat. Run. Survive. Instead, Caldwell locks onto a Stuka. 6 guns converge. The bomber's wing separates from the fuselage in a spray of aluminum fragments. He pulls up hard vision, graying from G-forces, selects another target, and fires. The Stuka spirals into the desert, trailing black smoke. Around him, the sky dissolves into chaos. Tomahawks slice through the bomber formation at impossible angles. Tracers arc in every direction. BF-109s dive from altitude to intercept, but the P-40s are already below them, accelerating in the dive too fast to catch. Caldwell destroys a third Stuka, a fourth, a fifth. His gun camera captures each kill in silent black and white footage. Then a BF-109 catches him in a climbing turn, the one maneuver the P-40 cannot win. Cannon shells rip through the Tomahawk's tail section. Tracer rounds punch holes across the fuselage like a sewing machine. The cockpit fills with acrid smoke and the stench of burning hydraulic fluid. Caldwell's left arm goes numb. Hot blood spreads across his flight suit. The stick feels loose, disconnected. The engine temperature gauge spikes into the red. The propeller vibrates violently, threatening to tear itself free from the reduction gearbox. He pushes the nose down. The P-40 shudders but holds together. Gravity pulls him toward the Earth at 400 miles per hour. The BF-109 tries to follow but overshoots German pilots are trained not to exceed safe dive speeds. Caldwell has no such restraint. He levels out at 500 feet above the desert floor. The Allison engine is dying. Coolant sprays across the windscreen, instantly freezing in the 300-mile-per-hour slipstream. He can't see forward. He can't feel his left hand. The horizon tilts and spins, but the Tomahawk keeps flying. Across the same battle, other pilots face identical moments. Aircraft shredded by cannon fire, engines failing, blood pooling in cockpits. Flight Lieutenant Neville Duke takes a 20mm high-explosive round through the wing root. The detonation blows a hole large enough to crawl through. The main spar is visible, twisted but intact. The wing flexes dangerously with every maneuver threatening to fold. He doesn't disengage. He claims 2 more kills, then nurses the crippled fighter back to base and lands successfully. Flying Officer Gordon Steege's coolant line ruptures during a head-on attack against a Ju-88. Glycol vaporizes instantly. White smoke floods the cockpit. He has 8 minutes, maybe 10, before the engine seizes completely. He doesn't run. He destroys 2 more bombers, then glides the dead aircraft toward a forward airstrip with the propeller windmilling uselessly. He lands dead stick at 110 miles per hour, skids through the sand, and walks away uninjured. Bobby Gibbs loses all hydraulic pressure when a 7.92mm round severs the main line. No flaps, no brakes. Landing speed climbs to 120 miles per hour. He touches down on a short emergency strip, skids off the end of the runway, plows through a fuel dump, and stops 10 feet from a cliff edge. The aircraft is a write-off. Gibbies is fine. The battle lasts 23 minutes. When the guns finally fall silent, 11 Axis aircraft are confirmed burning in the sand. Dozens more limp home with battle damage. The bomber strike has been shattered. Every single P-40 that entered the fight returns to base. Damaged, bleeding fuel and coolant, wings perforated, but home. Ground crews stare in disbelief at the wrecks taxiing in. One Tomahawk has 94 separate bullet holes. Another has a 20mm cannon shell lodged in the fuselage structure, unexploded, wedged between the radio and oxygen system. A third is missing 18 inches of wing, the aileron dangling by control cables. All 3 are repaired and fly combat missions again within 48 hours. The impossible has become routine, but across the Pacific an even greater test is coming. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. The Japanese strike shatters American illusions of invulnerability. In a single morning, the U.S. Pacific Fleet is crippled. 18 ships sunk or damaged. Over 180 aircraft destroyed on the ground. But Welch and Taylor prove something crucial in those chaotic minutes over Oahu. The P-40 can fight Zeros and win. Not through agility, through firepower, armor, and disciplined tactics. That lesson spreads across the Pacific. To the Philippines, where P-40Es of the Far East Air Force fight delaying actions against overwhelming Japanese forces. To Java, where Dutch and American pilots fly battered Warhawks until the last airfields fall. And to China, where Claire Chennault's Flying Tigers are about to transform the P-40 from a stopgap fighter into a legend. December 20th, 1941, Kunming, China, the AVG's first combat mission. 10 P-40Bs intercept a formation of Japanese Ki-48 bombers escorted by Ki-27 fighters. Chennault's tactical doctrine is tested under fire for the first time. The Flying Tigers climb to altitude dive on the bombers, destroy 3 in the first pass, then extend away before the escorts can react. The Japanese fighters turn to pursue. The P-40s climb using their superior speed reverse and dive again. The battle becomes a textbook execution of boom and zoom tactics. No dogfighting, no turning engagements, just altitude speed and 6 .50 caliber guns. The AVG claims 9 kills without a single loss. Over the next 7 months, the Flying Tigers compile one of the most lopsided victory ratios in aviation history. 229 confirmed kills, 12 pilots lost in air combat. The shark-mouthed P-40s become a symbol of resistance across China and Burma. The underdog fighter is proving everyone wrong. November 25, 1941. Cyrenaica, the sky over City Rezeg. Caldwell's left arm has healed enough to grip the stick. Barely. The stitches pull with every movement, sending pain up to his shoulder. Flight surgeons order him grounded. He ignores them. The siege of Tobruk is breaking. Rommel's forces are withdrawing. One more push. One more day. Intelligence reports the largest Axis bomber strike of the entire North African campaign. Every available Stuka from STG-3, Ju-88s from KG-76, all escorted by the full fighter strength of Jagdgeschwader 27, Bf-109F is flown by the Luftwaffe's best. Number 250 Squadron scrambles 9 serviceable Tomahawks. RAF Number 3 Squadron adds 6 more, 15 total, against 70. They climb through scattered clouds at 14,000 feet. Below, the Mediterranean shimmers like hammered steel. Ahead, the horizon darkens. Caldwell counts them. 50, 60, 70, maybe more. His radio crackles. All units engage at will, good hunting. No dramatics. Just acknowledgement that this is suicide. Caldwell rolls, inverted, and dives. The closure rate is insane. The bombers grow from dots to machines in seconds. He centers the gun sight on the lead Stuka and fires. All 6 Brownings roar. Brass streams past the canopy. Tracers converge on the Stuka's engine. It explodes. Flames engulf the cockpit. The bomber rolls and falls. Caldwell pulls back hard, 7 Gs. Vision tunnels. World goes gray. When it clears, another Stuka fills the windscreen. He fires. The tail disintegrates. The bomber tumbles into the desert. The sky transforms into chaos. P-40s knife through the formation from every angle. Stukas scatter. Some jettison bombs blindly and run. Others press their dives toward ships in the harbor. Bf-109 scream down from 18,000 feet. Caldwell sees one lining up on his wingman Flight Sergeant Dennis Hewson. He breaks hard left reverses with full rudder. The 109 overshoots. Caldwell fires a deflection shot from 90 degrees. The burst catches the Messerschmitt's cockpit. Canopy shatters. The 109 rolls inverted and plunges. His 4th kill. The battle spreads across 20 miles. Caldwell chases a fleeing Stuka, closes to 50 yards, close enough to see the rear gunner frantically swiveling his MG-81 and fires until the guns click empty. The Stuka's fuel tank explodes. Fireball, debris, 5 confirmed kills. He checks his instruments. Fuel low, ammunition gone, coolant temperature redlining, engine vibration increasing. He keys the radio. All units disengage and return to base. Repeat, disengage now. The Tomahawks peel away one by one, leaving the shattered formation behind. Bombers still burning as they fall. Others limping east, trailing smoke. The sky over City Rezeg is clear. Caldwell's engine coughs. Temperature climbs past red into danger. He throttles back, nursing the dying Allison toward friendly territory. Each cylinder misfires. The prop barely turns. The cockpit reeks of scorched metal. He crosses Allied lines at 2,000 feet. The engine seizes with a metallic scream. The propeller freezes. Absolute silence except for wind. Caldwell glides toward the emergency strip at City Rezeg, cleared desert marked by oil drums. No tower, no equipment, just sand. No power, no second chances. The runway rushes up at 110 miles per hour. He flares at the last moment, touches down hard skids to a stop in towering dust. He sits motionless, hands trembling, unable to process what just happened. Ground crews sprint to the aircraft. Over 120 bullet and cannon holes, engine destroyed, wing shredded, tail attached by cables and prayers. But Caldwell is alive. He's flown home on geometry, willpower, and an airframe that refused to quit. December 10th, 1941. Tobruk is relieved after 240 days of siege. The P-40 squadrons have lost aircraft, engines burned out, airframes wrecked, pilots' dead names on casualty list, graves in sand. But the line held. The Tomahawk's reputation transforms overnight. What was dismissed as obsolete is now recognized as essential. The fighter that couldn't compete over England has become the backbone of 3 critical theaters. In North Africa, over 30 pilots achieve ace status on P-40s. Caldwell finishes with 28.5, confirmed kills, the highest scoring Commonwealth P-40 pilot. Neville Duke claims 27, Bobby Gibbas claims 10. In China and Burma, the Flying Tigers compile an impossible record. Between December 20, 1941 and July 4, 1942, they claim 229 confirmed kills against Japanese aircraft. They lose 12 pilots in air combat. Not 12 aircraft, 12 pilots. The shark-mouthed Warhawks become legendary. Chinese civilians paint P-40 silhouettes on walls. Newspapers publish photos of grinning American pilots standing on battered wings. In the Pacific, American squadrons learn the same lessons. Don't turn with zeros, don't climb with Oscars, dive shoot, survive. The P-40 isn't the best fighter, everyone knows that, but it's available, durable, and it buys time. Time for the P-38 Lightning, time for the F-4U Corsair, time for the P-51 Mustang to become the war winner it will be. The cost is real. Engines fail after 200 hours instead of 400. Airframes crack from repeated high-G combat. Pilots die when luck runs out. Coolant lines rupture too far from base, oxygen systems fail. At altitude, one bullet finds something vital. But the P-40 delivers what the Allies desperately need in 1941 and 1942 presence. An aircraft that absorbs damage, keeps flying, and returns tomorrow. Production lines in Buffalo run 24 hours daily. By November 1944, over 13,700 P-40s have been built. They serve everywhere. Soviet pilots on the Eastern Front, Brazilian squadrons in Italy, New Zealand, and South African units across the Mediterranean, Australian squadrons defending Darwin. The aircraft evolves, P-40E, Kitty Hawk P-40F, with Packard Merlin engine P-40N, lightweight variant, more power, better armament, improved cooling. But the philosophy remains, build it strong, keep it simple. Bring the pilot home. Curtiss Wright engineers never intended to create a legend. They built a compromise, a stopgap, an interim solution. But on the proving ground of war, the P-40 became something unexpected. Not the fastest, not the most maneuverable, not the highest climbing, but the most reliable under fire, the most forgiving of pilot error, the most likely to absorb hits meant for the man inside and keep flying when everything else fell apart. Pilots didn't love the P-40, not like Spitfire or Mustang pilots loved their mounts, but they respected it, trusted it, knew it would take the punishment and bring them home. That trust saved thousands of lives across 4 years of war. The P-40's impact extends far beyond kill counts. In tactical doctrine, it shatters assumptions. Altitude isn't everything. Low-level combat boom and zoom tactics discipline teamwork. These defeat superior aircraft when executed with precision. The lessons from North Africa and China flow directly into later designs. The P-51 Mustang inherits the P-40's robust construction philosophy. The P-47 Thunderbolt amplifies armored survivability to extremes. The strategic lesson is simpler mass production of reliable fighters shapes wars. Better to field 1,000 dependable aircraft than 100 perfect ones. The Soviet Union receives nearly 2,500 P-40s through Lend-Lease. Soviet pilots initially scoff, then grudgingly accept their value in ground attack and low-altitude interception. The aircraft's simplicity makes maintenance possible in primitive field conditions. In Australia, the RAF makes the P-40 its primary fighter through 1943. They defend Darwin, support New Guinea operations, and hold the northern frontier until Spitfires arrive. In China, the P-40 transcends function. It becomes symbol. The Flying Tigers' shark-mouthed fighters represent American support Allied resistance. After the AVG disbands in July 1942, the Chinese-American Composite Wing continues using Warhawks until 1945, training Chinese pilots in Chenol's tactics. The weaknesses never disappear. High-altitude combat above 20,000 feet remains fatal against late-war FW-190s and Bf-109Gs. Against Japanese Kai-84 Franks by 1944, the P-40 is hopelessly outclassed. By war's end, most frontline units fly P-51s, P-38s, or P-47s. The P-40 is relegated to training and rear area defense, but none of that erases what it accomplished when it mattered most. The P-40 holds North Africa when the Commonwealth is losing. It keeps Burma contested long enough for supplies to reach China. It defends Australia when invasion looms. It fights back at Pearl Harbor in the war's first chaotic minutes. The P-40 doesn't win the war. No single aircraft does, but it prevents Allied defeat in 1941 and 1942, the years when losing seemed inevitable and resources were scarce. That margin changes everything. It buys time for American industry to mobilize, time for better fighters to reach combat, time for pilots to gain experience, time for strategy to evolve. Over 13,700 P-40s are built by November 1944. They serve everywhere: Soviet pilots on the Eastern Front, Brazilian squadrons over Italy, New Zealand, and South African units across the Mediterranean. In wartime is the rarest resource. The P-40 purchases it with durability and the lives of men who flew it into impossible odds and somehow came home. After the war ends, the P-40s are systematically scrapped, melted down for aluminum, recycled into peacetime products, forgotten in the shadow of more glamorous fighters. A few survive in museums, their shark mouths still grinning behind plexiglass barriers. Restoration projects bring a handful back to flight status, their Allison engines roaring across modern airshow skies, thrilling crowds who never knew the terror of combat at 400 miles per hour. But the real legacy of the P-40 isn't preserved in museums or vintage footage. It's embedded in a principle that transcends aviation, transcends war, transcends the specific machines and men who fought in those desperate years. The P-40 proved that survival is its own form of genius, that an aircraft dismissed as inferior, outdated, and inadequate can become indispensable when the situation demands endurance over elegance, reliability over performance, presence over perfection. It taught a generation of pilots that the best fighter isn't always the one with the highest top speed, or the tightest turning radius, or the loftiest service ceiling. Sometimes the best fighter is simply the one that refuses to fall, the one that absorbs the punishment meant for you: the bullets, the cannon shells, the mechanical failures, the impossible odds, and brings you home to fight again tomorrow. Clive Caldwell, Neville Duke, Bobby Gibbs, George Welch, Ken Taylor, and thousands of others whose names never made the history books climbed into that cramped cockpit knowing the P-40 couldn't outmaneuver the enemy, couldn't outclimb them, couldn't outrun them in level flight, but they also knew something more important. It wouldn't quit on them. In the desperate years when the outcome of the war balanced on the edge of a knife, when resources were scarce and allies were few, that stubborn refusal to die was enough. Not elegant, not celebrated, just enough. The sky didn't belong to the fastest aircraft or the most advanced or the ones with the best performance specifications in engineering manuals. It belonged to the ones still flying when the sun went down,